Horror games come in all shapes and sizes, with different gameplay elements and visuals. I'm always intrigued to see what new stories games of this genre will explore. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a horror game that sets out to tell a dark story about a circus, a man, and his grief, adding to it some excellent atmosphere, pixel art style, and somber music. Hi everyone, my name is Jeremy and this is my non-spoiler review for Vlad Circus Descent into Madness for the PS5. The game was developed by Indisruption and published by Blowfish Studios. Vlad Circus Descent into Madness follows the story of Oliver Mills, a man who used to be a part of the Vlad Circus. Many years ago, this circus closed due to a horrible fire that destroyed everything. Oliver was traumatized with the incident and only recently got out of the mental hospital. He received a letter from the owner of the circus inviting him and the old members of the circus to his house for a reunion with the intention of reopening Vlad Circus. Strange things start to happen and now it's up to you to explore and decipher what is going on. The story of this game is told through pixel art style cutscenes, dialogue, and journal entries. Characters are fleshed out and are interesting. There is a lot of character exploration, especially with the main character, through the journal entries. The themes of psychological trauma, grief, and madness are explored deeply. So let's talk about the visuals of this game. This game goes for a pixel art style that is very particular. Other times when I play games with pixel art styles, they look more chibi. In this case, the characters look more stretched out, and they seem to have elongated arms and legs, but they look really good. And you can really appreciate the details in the models because of this. Each character has a portrait, and even their portraits and the cutscenes of the game are made out of pixel art. The game takes place in a mansion and its surrounding areas. And I have to say that the areas are eerie, somber, and beautiful. Each area has a lot of detail. In the case of the mansion, the walls and the floor look very detailed. And in the rest of the areas, you're gonna find a lot of stuff to look at, and it makes the environment and the setting look rich. And of course, there's a lot of stuff to interact with. And last but not least, the lighting in this game is very good and adds a lot to the atmosphere. In terms of performance, all I can say is that the game ran at a consistent frame rate. The only bug that I experienced was one, and I only experienced it once. And it was an audio glitch or bug, where the footsteps sound effects kept playing independently of my movement. So let's talk about the music. In terms of the music, I would describe it as melancholic, somber, and moody. And I love the fact that the music lets itself be felt, because as you play through the game, you are going to notice the music. And there are certain areas in the game where there's no music, only sound effects, as most horror games do. But throughout most of the game, you will notice the music, and it creates some very melancholic and somber atmosphere. So let's talk about the gameplay. Vlad Circus Descent into Madness is a psychological survival horror game with puzzle solving. The gameplay focuses on story, exploration, puzzle solving, and to a less extent, fighting. Following story objectives, you will have to explore the Petrescu mansion and its surrounding premises, collecting key items and finding the right place to use them. Sometimes you will have to combine key items to get new ones to use in specific places. You have limited inventory. You can drop items on the floor and pick them up later, and you can upgrade your max inventory space by finding backpacks. The game features a stress mechanic that serves almost like the HP of the character. There are rooms with enemies that if they come close or attack the main character, your stress bar will start to fill. You can leave the area to stop it from going up. After a while, the stress bar goes down. The game also features a praying mechanic through the rosary item that you can use to lower the stress bar. If the stress bar fills up, your character falls unconscious and wakes up in another area of the game. In this game, you can also run for a limited amount of time, But it's important to note that the stamina bar is invisible. You also have a lantern that runs on kerosene and that you will have to refill to keep it bright. You have a journal where the character writes down his thoughts, giving you more insight into the thoughts and feelings of the main character in the story. You also have a tab for a very basic map. You have another tab for objectives, and one last tab where the character takes note of the places where he has dropped items. Like I mentioned before, there are enemies in this game. They mostly consist of headless corpses and rats, among other things. You will acquire weapons to defend yourself with, like a gun and a knife. Enemies do come back after a while, rats being the exception. There are multiple areas to explore in this game. Most areas are connected and are distinct from each other while still feeling as part of the same real estate. Vlad Circus Descent into Madness takes around 3 to 5 hours to complete, depending on how fast you play through the game. So let's talk about the cons and the pros of this game. And I'm gonna start out with the cons. The first thing that I would have to point out as a shortcoming of this game is the backtracking. The game has a lot of puzzles to solve, mainly through pairing the right key items with the right place to use them. But you won't always know where certain key items go. If you add to that the size of the mansion and its surrounding areas, you will get as a result a lot of backtracking. You will have to go back and forth a lot trying to find out where you need to use certain key items, and it can get very tiresome. The second thing that I would like to criticize of this game is the fighting, which I think is underutilized. As I said before, you have weapons that you can use to defend yourself from enemies in this game. The fighting in this game is serviceable, but it's not incredibly elaborated, and honestly, it's not integrated to the gameplay loop, to the point where most of the time I felt like I was playing through an adventure horror game instead of a survival horror game, which this game is. Most enemies can be ignored throughout the entire game, except for the last quarter of the story where you will have compulsory enemy encounters. Sadly, by that time it's too little and too late for this aspect of the game to feel fully integrated into the gameplay loop. So let's talk about the strengths of this game. I would have to point out two things. First of all, the atmosphere. The mix of the music, lighting, setting, and visuals create a somber atmosphere of mystery, sadness, and confusion that will delight the player throughout the entire game. And the second pro or strength of this game is its story. The game's story goes deep into character exploration and explores dark themes of grief, madness, and psychological trauma, among many other things. I have to be sincere that I didn't love where the story went at the end, but it was still very good. In conclusion, Vlad Circus Descent into Madness manages to deliver some excellent pixel art style visuals and melancholic, moody music that create a somber atmosphere that is engaging and mesmerizing. The foundation of these elements is a dark story that explores themes of psychological trauma, grief, and madness, and doesn't shy away from some bloody imagery. Sadly, the weakest part of this edifice is the gameplay. While it manages to serve some traditional puzzle solving and exploration, the backtracking brings the story pacing down, and the fighting is not properly integrated to the gameplay loop, making it feel like an afterthought when it could have made this edifice magnificent. Despite these shortcomings, the final structure is solid. For this reason, I recommend Vlad Circus Descent into Madness for the PS5. That's going to be it for my non-spoiler review. Remember to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next time. Bye! Hi everyone, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with our content.